Hello everyone, and welcome to my video covering the new cards coming in Magnificent Monsters. This includes a bunch of new Pendulum cards, this includes new DM support, this just includes a lot of new good cards. I'm excited to talk about what they do for Power Patron. I'm gonna kind of just go in order of like DM to GX to whatever, just because, I don't know, it just feels right, you know? Let's get started. We're gonna start with the new DM support with the Dark Magical Curtain and Multiplying Kuriboh. You might be wondering why I'm talking about DM support, and it's entirely because of the fusion monster Dark Magician of Destruction, which I'm sure all of you are pretty familiar with by now, but if you're not, is a dark spellcaster fusion that you can make by banishing a level 6 or higher dark spellcaster monster you control's material during the turn you've used a spell card or effect, and we will obviously have used one because we're playing a pendulum deck. The main thing that matters here is we can get to this through either using a card like Astrograph Sorcerer as our dark spellcaster that we can get off of something like a Beyond the Pendulum, or we can use the OG Thea Realize to change any of our level 6 or higher monsters into dark spellcasters, and then using them for the Dark Magician of Destruction. And we now have some new search targets for this card, as on summon it can search a Dark Magician or any card that mentions it. So we have the new Dark Magical Curtain, a quick play spell that allows both players to summon a dark spellcaster from their hand or deck, but neither player can activate their effects this turn. And then you get a bonus effect if you summon the Dark Magician or DMG. That doesn't matter unless you want to play this as like an actual hybrid with Dark Magician, which like you could. This card does allow you to kind of do that now. But this card is good for reasons that might not be immediately obvious. Of course, this can just summon any Dark Spellcaster Pendulum monster like the Astrograph Sorcerers, which can then be used as link material to keep extending. That's the main usage case for this, right? If you now have Thea Realize Engrave because you used it to get to Medius, and your opponent has been interacting with you and trying to stop you, you can turn any of your monsters in a Dark Magician to Destruction, search this, summon a Pendulum, and keep going, right? That's nice for sure. The place I think this card is really interesting is that this can be used to summon any Dark Spellcaster Pendulum, and then you can link off that Dark Spellcaster Pendulum, and then bring it back with either a Pendulum summon or Exceed the Pendulum to then get its effects live on the field. That's very interesting. There's not a ton of really powerful Dark Spellcaster Pendulums that you would want to do that with. We do get a new one in this set, which I will be talking about, but I think it's still an interesting card to note nonetheless. It makes future Dark Spellcasters a lot better, and in general, this card is just interesting all around. The other cool thing about this card is that it is a quick play, so you could search this, and then set it, and then summon a Dark Spellcaster, or sorry, so yes, you could summon a Dark Spellcaster if you want to use like a floating effect or something. The other thing you could do is activate this on your turn, summon the Dark Spellcaster, and then on your opponent's turn, that Dark Spellcaster's effect will be live. So, like, if you summon the new Astrograph Sorcerer, its effects will be live in the opponent's turn. Any other Dark Spellcaster, you can also have their effects live in the opponent's turn. Might be something interesting you can do with that as well, especially into something like, it's not Fualos, because you'd be summoning 2 from deck. That's probably not worth it. But maybe something like Droll if, like, the D-Mod is your first search. I don't know. Maybe something cool to do with that. But this card is good. I think it has room for experimentation. Having D-Mod now have potentially this and Gaze of Timaeus as search targets, I think also makes D-Mod a lot better as an option in the deck, whereas previously I don't really think it was worth it. Now, I think there's an argument for it. This card is pretty strong. And then after that, we've got a card that I wasn't even considering as a potential option for Patron, which is Multiplying Kuriboh, which is a hand trap that can be used when your opponent activates a monster effect or declares an attack. And then it's able to summon itself. And then when your opponent activates a monster effect in the field or during damage calc when they declare an attack, you can add to your hand or special summon a Dark Magician or a monster with 300 attack or defense from your deck or grave. Then you can change that opponent's monster's attack to 0. Why does this matter? Well, all of the main deck power patrons are 300 attack, 200 defense. Well, besides Vidolium, of course, but all the relevant main deck power or not relevant, but all the summonable main deck power patrons are all 300, 200, which is crazy. And something important to note about Multiplying Kuriboh, it's a soft once per turn. So you could theoretically go Multiplying Kuriboh, your opponent uses an effect, you summon another Multiplying Kuriboh, your opponent uses an effect, you can summon another Multiplying Kuriboh, then summon your power patron. So theoretically, you could start your turn off with 4 monsters on your field. Now, that is a very easy play to interact with, but it is cool that it is something you can do. More importantly, though, this does just let you get any Power Patron onto the board on turn 0. That isn't anything insane, because none of these really have quick effects, except for the Elf Note Power Patron and the Archmage Power Patron. So the Archmage Power Patron is probably the most interesting one. It allows you to quick fuse during I believe the main phase. Yes, during the main phase, you can fuse summon an Archmage or Nerva from your extra deck using this card and monsters from hand or field. So if you draw this and another Archmage monster, you can use this to quick fuse on turn 0 to make non-finito, and then non-finito can set recapture to have a monster negate and destroy. And if you were able to, and you can quick fuse with the multiplying Kuriboh on your field to make a copy of Dragos Tapelia. So on turn 0, you get 2 monster negates, which is pretty damn good, and you get to search off the Archmage Power Patron for Assault, or if you're on a bigger Archmage engine, you get the field spell. That's really strong if you can actually do it. The problem is you do have to draw multiplying Kuriboh plus an Archmage monster, which is not even close to a guarantee, and otherwise multiplying Kuriboh isn't a great card, so you are very much trying to high roll with this play, but it is cool that this is a play you can do. The other thing you can do that's a little less good, should I say, is you can use multiplying Kuriboh to summon 2 more copies of itself, and then the last multiplying Kuriboh can summon a copy of Elf Note Power Patron. Then on your, you can, whenever you want, use Elf Note Power Patron to increase the level of one of the multiplying Kuribohs in your center zone to make it a level 4. Then you can tune your level 1 Elf Note Power Patron, your level 4 multiplying Kuriboh, and your other 2 multiplying Kuribohs to make the level 7 Stelitzia, and then trigger Elf Note Power Patron to search an Elf Note monster from your deck. You got that? All right. And then Stelitzia can be used to summon that Elf Note monster from your hand, or if you search Regina, you can just summon Regina by sending the Stelitzia, which is interesting. That is like a legitimately decent play. Well, not decent, but powerful play if you can do it all. The problem is you have to resolve multiplying Kuriboh 3 times, which is realistically probably not going to happen. But if you do, it is pretty powerful, admittedly. But that's what I have to say about these. The other interesting thing about multiplying Kuriboh is it is searchable. So you could turn any of your monsters in a DMod and then search multiplying Kuriboh if you don't want to commit like extra deck space to a Dragoon, or you don't want to play like a Brick in the Gaze of Timaeus, right? You could just play multiplying Kuriboh and Dark Magical Curtain, and then you don't have to play any bricks, because I would argue multiplying Kuriboh isn't really a brick. Something else cool about this card is you can use it on your turn. So if your opponent uses a monster effect to try and like stop you from doing things, you can then summon this, and then if they use a monster effect on their field to stop you from doing things, you can then use this again to get a patron on your board. And I mean, that is full combo from there, so it's not bad. I think there's interesting applications for this card. It's just yet to be seen if this card's actually worth playing or not. Next up, we have the GX support, and the only card here that's worth talking about in regards to Patron is the new favorite hero, Shining Flare Wingman. This is a fusion monster. It takes a fusion monster and any face-up monster in the field. And if this card is special summoned from the extra deck, you can shuffle 5 monsters from your grave into the deck, then draw 2 cards. It's the only text that matters in this card. So the reason I'm talking about this card is, 1, it is a super poly target, which is nice, but the important thing is that this card can be made with non-finito very, very easily. So this card guarantees you'll be able to use non-finito's effective fuse and do something, and importantly, this card does do something. Being able to recycle 5 monsters from your grave and then drawing 2 cards is pretty damn good. Especially considering you're probably going to draw 2 cards off Ginoldo. If you want, it is now very easy to set up a board where you draw 2 off Ginoldo on your turn, 2 off of Ginoldo, 2 off Ginoldo on your opponent's turn, 2 off Dugaris, and 2 off of this. So you could theoretically deep draw for like 8 cards between you and your opponent's turn. Even if you don't play the Dugaris, you can still deep draw for like 6 cards, which is disgusting. Like, that is kind of crazy that you just get to do that. The only downside is that this is worse into like lingering hand traps, because you probably won't have 5 monsters in your grave if they do that, so you won't actually be able to use this card's effect. But it is an interesting card in that regard. Being able to recycle stuff and draw 2, I think, is nice. Having it in a Pot of Avarice accessible does feel pretty good, so I thought it was worth talking about. Nothing for 5Ds. There is one card that's kind of interesting, which is the new Stardust Dragon, but you'd have to be running. It's more interesting for Elf Notes than it is for Power Patron. So now we get to go on to, well, okay, and then there's Zexal. Nothing interesting for Zexal, in my opinion. Then we get on to the Arc 5 support, which is, I'm sure, what everyone's been waiting for. for me to talk about. We have the new Odd Eyes Dragon, the new Astrograph Sorcerer, the new Horoscope Sorcerer, and I'm also going to go ahead and talk about the new Draco Slayer monster that's also coming in this set. So first off, we have the new Odd Eyes monster, which has the scale effect that lets you, during your main phase, destroy this card, and if you add a Pendulum monster with 15 or less attack from your deck to your hand, but for the rest of the turn, you are locked into... you cannot use monster effects on the field until you Pendulum summon. So it's kind of like Beyond the Pendulum, but less restrictive, but it is in the main deck and doesn't let you search as many cards, right? But this card is pretty good, and it reads quite strong. It also has a scale effect, or a monster effect, that once you Pendulum summon it, it gains attack with the difference between your scales, which is funny for Patron. It means you're going to gain like 3,000 attacks, so this guy will be a 5,600 beater. That also deals double battle damage. So this thing is like an OTK machine, which is very funny. And then if it's destroyed in the monster zone by battle or card effect, you can add it to your hand, and if it was destroyed by your opponent, you can special summon it. So, pretty cool card. The issue here is that I don't think this card is even close to as good as Beyond the Pendulum is for Power Patron. Now, I do think this card is very good in some other Pendulum decks, because some decks can't get to Beyond the Pendulum before the Pen Summon, or they have a different Link 2 that they'd rather be making, so this card feels a lot better to play, or this card is super searchable in Engine, so it just feels better in that regard, right? There's a few different reasons why a deck might want to play this instead. I will say this card gets way better because of the new Odd Eyes Override Dragon, because Override Dragon will give you a second Pen Summon. So you are able to now use this and Beyond the Pendulum in the same turn. You can start with Beyond the Pendulum, then get your second Pen Summon, use this, search again, and then pen for a second time. Like, that's pretty good. That being said, I think that's just doing too much, especially in a deck like Patron, for that to realistically be viable, but it is an interesting thing to think about. I like this card, I just don't think this is quite the home for it. Next up, we have the big one, which is the new Astrograph Sorcerer. This card, during the main phase, lets you destroy it, and if you do, place a Pendulum monster whose Pendulum scales 1 from your hand or deck in the Pendulum zone, but it can't use its Pendulum effects this turn. And then its monster effects is, if a face-up monster card you control is destroyed by battle or card effect, you can summon this card from your hand, then you can special summon one of those destroyed monsters from your grave or face-up extra deck. It also has the effect that during the main phase as a quick effect, you can tribute this card to fusion summon a dragon fusion monster from your extra deck by shuffling its materials from your field and or face-up extra deck into the deck. This card is really strong for Patron. The scale effect lets you place any of the scale 1 power patrons from your deck. So theoretically, you can place them into the scale and then pop them with something in order to trigger their effects. Also, Nervado specifically has a scale effect that can be used by not activating it. When you use Nervado's scale effect, it doesn't activate, it happens on resolution. So it actually can still be used even if you place it with Astrograph Sorcerer, which is pretty cool. That being said, that effect I think only matters for the hybrid builds of this deck. I might be wrong, but no. That effect is good. I am undervaluing it. It's also a way to get like a Genoldo into the scale, although you won't be able to use it on your turn, but you can use it on your opponent's turn. You can also search this with Beyond the Pendulum and then use it as your low scale and then still get it into the extra deck to then be added back later with Exceed the Pendulum, which is really cool. That means you don't have to go through Shade to get to this card, which feels a lot better. In general, this card just feels a lot better, and that's before we even get into the monster effect, which I think, while not objectively a better version of the original Astrograph Sorcerer, I think is better in a lot of situations for Power Patron, because getting a body back is a lot of the times better than getting a search off of it, right? What's also nice is this card can be used a lot more efficiently going second as well, because if you summon a monster and then your opponent takes it out but with destruction, it's very possible that you'll be able to trigger that monster if it was a Power Patron, and then you'll also get to summon the Astrograph Sorcerer and summon back that monster for just a ton of bodies flooding the board, which can be really hard for your opponent to deal with. The other thing I really like about this card is that you can use this to bring back extra deck monsters if they get outed with something like Fallen in the Virtuous, for example. So the best example I can think of is if your opponent, like Fallen in the Virtuous, is your non-finito. You can use this, bring back the non-finito, and trigger the non-finito on summon. That's really, really powerful. And finally, this last effect, which allows you to quick fuse into a dragon fusion, is really good as well. It gives Power Patron the ability to access Secretarion Dragon fairly easily, which is scary. This card is quite good. But the big thing is it makes it even easier to get to Vortex, especially now that we have the new Link monster. So this is another way to quick fuse into the Vortex Dragon, so you don't have to use Absolute Dragon, meaning you have to use the non-finito. But this card also makes it easier to use those cards to go into Absolute Dragon as well. So it opens you up to a ton of ways to access Vortex Dragon, and this card is, I think, a better extender than Astrograph Sorcerer. It also pairs really well with Astrograph Sorcerer, because you can open this plus Astrograph, pop this, scale a guy, trigger Astrograph, summon this, summon the Astrograph, search another copy of this. A lot of cool stuff. Really, really, really cool card. Does a lot for the deck. I don't know if it's going to find a slot in my list, but I'm definitely going to be experimenting with this card. It's very, very powerful. Next up, we've got a card that is also very powerful. I don't know if it's very powerful for Patron, though, and that is the Horoscope Sorcerer, the Stargazer Magician. So this card has the scale effect that when a spell card or effect activated by your opponent resolves, if you control a Magician, Pendulum, or an Odd Eyes monster, you can negate that effect, then destroy this card. So importantly, that will happen on resolution. So this card can deal with cards like Super Poly, Forbidden Droplet, Forbidden Crown, which is really nice. Then its monster effects is you can discard a Magician Pendulum, a Performapal, or an Odd Eyes monster to summon this from your hand. And then if this card is special summoned, you can add a Pendulum monster with 2500 attack from your deck to your hand. And then it has one more effect that allows you to target a Pendulum monster card you control, destroy it, then you can add one face-up Pendulum monster from your extra deck to your hand. This is really powerful. If you summon this card does so much. It gets you into the new Astrograph Sorcerer, who can then pop itself in the scale to place any of your Power Patrons. Then you can use this thing's other effect to pop that Power Patron and then add the Astrograph back to your hand, triggering both the Power Patron and the Astrograph. That's so powerful. It is unbelievably strong to do that play. The problem is you have to get this card on your field. This card is not free to get on there. It is really rough because this card is really strong, but this summoning condition is just not easy for a deck like Patron to do. And even honestly, for the deck it's meant for, having to discard a card in any Pendulum deck for cost does feel pretty bad. It means this card isn't great going second. I will say the scale effect is also really, really important as well. Something Patron would like is a card that just kind of answers board breakers. And of course you can use a Floodgate to do that, but this is a way to do it that requires like 0 extra deck commitment, which is really nice. You just have to be like playing the new Astrograph Sorcerer, search this as part of your combo as your low scale this, pop it, get the new horoscope, and like that's all you need, right? Very, very scary. This card's good. It is very, very good. It's potentially really good as like a side deck option. Really good card. I would definitely consider it. The last card I want to talk about is the new Wind Unicorn Parallel the Draco Slayer, or at least the last Pendulum I want to talk about. This card is pretty good. I don't know if it's that good for Patron, but it is pretty good. If you have a card in your other Pendulum zone, you can activate one of these effects. You can summon this card, or you can destroy this card. If you do, summon a level 5 or lower Pendulum monster card from your Pendulum zone. And then it has the monster effects that while this Pendulum Summon card is in your monster zone, your opponent cannot target it with card effects, and it can't be destroyed by your opponent's card effects. And then as a quick effect, you can target a Pendulum monster card you control and a card your opponent controls and return them to the hand. So this card's very similar to Kieran, it just has a scale effect that also makes it an extender, and that is a pretty big deal. That scale effect is pretty solid. It means this card's a very easy card you can tack on to your end board. Something else is it is a quick effect on both turns. So this card can also just be used as like a good extender that can also help you break boards, right? I do like this card quite a lot. Just being able to summon it going second, use its effect immediately to bounce 2 cards back, I think is really strong. I don't know if it's that crazy for Patron, just because, again, Patron does have some tight space, but I don't know. It is a good card, and like it probably isn't terribly difficult to add to your end board either, since, I mean, just summoning this is an end board piece. This might be really good into something like Fua. I don't know. This card's definitely worth considering. Something else you could consider because of this card is the Magispector rank 4. If you guys have never read this card, it allows you to, if a monster is tributed, special summon a level 6 or low wind spellcaster from your deck. So you can like end on this, or not end on this, you can make this before making non-finito, and then tribute to summon non-finito, and then this will trigger, allowing you to summon the parallel from deck. Kind of cool, right? But I like this card. I think it's interesting. I think this is another one that will also see a lot of experimentation. I think these 3 cards are all very interesting for Patron, and I think people will be messing around with them for sure. Very much look to pick up these cards if you play Patron. The last things I want to talk about are the new Link monsters coming in the set for the Vrain support, and also I'm going to talk about WP Fancy Ball. We got the new Decode Talker, the new Contract Witch, and the new IPSP card. So first we're going to talk about Decode Talker integration. This takes 2 or more effect monsters as a Link 3, and while it's in the extra monster and gains fire attack for each other Link monster in your field and grave, your opponent cannot target it with card effects. It has the quick effect that you contribute a monster this card points to send a Cyberse monster from your extra deck to the grave, and this card can make 2 attacks on monsters during each battle phase this turn. So the only reason I'm talking about this card is there are some pretty good Cyberse monsters you can bin from your extra deck. The main one is a Cyberse Deceive Worm. This card is, if you control a Link 4 or higher Cyberse monster, this card lets you banish this card from your grave to negate a spell, card, or effect, or a spell or trap activation, which is pretty good. You could make this early on to insulate a combo, or you could send this early on to insulate a combo from something like the Dominus cards. You could also use this just, again, to set up a really powerful spell or trap negate that's not on your field, so your opponent can't, like, pair a powerful board breaker with something like Droplet or Crown or whatever to just shut down your only negate. So I don't know. This card is, like, this is a really powerful play. There are some other good things you can send, the main ones being Mirror Logic Aggregator, which is just a target negate, and Packbit, which is a target push a guy into the back row. These are decent. The only thing I don't like is that they are kind of slow. You could, I guess, do this twice if you end on this card. So I don't know. This card's very interesting. Probably not that crazy for this deck, but is something to look out for combo decks in general. Then we have the Cyberse Contract Witch, which if it's Link summoned or if a monster summoned to a zone it points to, you can send a spell card from your hand or field to the grave to add a ritual monster from your deck to your hand. It also has the effect that can target a Ritual Fusion Synchro Xyz it points to summon a monster from your grave with the same type, but a different card type from your grave. This card is really strong, mostly because it lets you tag any of your... It basically lets you super easily bridge your Power Patron engine into any ritual engine, which is pretty strong. There's some very interesting things you can do with that. The main one I'm sure that comes to mind is Search Habakiri, baby, and it's cute, but admittedly it takes a lot of bricks. This makes it even easier to search Mistva, my goat. You could also search like Clown Crew Flare with this. There's some really cool things you can do that were a lot harder to do before this card existed. So I think this card is worth looking out for. I don't know if it's like that crazy in this deck, probably not, but it is a cool card that I think is worth looking out for. Also good to have in mind, if they ever print a ritual monster for the Medius archetypes, which they might because they have every other summoning type, so I wouldn't be that surprised if they printed a ritual for the Medius lore. Finally, you have WP Fancy Ball, and this card is really cool. It takes 2 or more effect monsters as a Link 3, and when your opponent activates a monster effect on the field or grave, you can banish this card that was summoned this turn until the end phase to negate that effect and banish that card. And then during your opponent's main phase, you can quick effect, immediately after this effect resolves, Link summon a Link monster. And if this card be used as the material, you can use a Link 2 or lower monster your opponent controls. And neither player can activate the effects of Link monsters in response to this effect's activation. So this card is cool as kind of like a midway between IP and, I guess, SP, but if I'm being honest, that first effect is really not SP. It's very scary. It's more like a Canine Ripper, actually. The main thing is this card's really good for 2 things, which is board breaking, since you can put this on board and force your opponent to use an interaction, or you can put this on board going first to stop your opponent from hand trapping. Oh, wait, no, never mind. I'm lying. Oh, I thought this card did it from the hand or grave. It's not Ripper. I'm just wrong. Okay, never mind. But this card is a good card. The other thing is it's a guy that can quick link, which is pretty cool. It means you could go like Purification or IP into this, and then use this for either the field or grave negate as an interruption, or you can use the quick link effect again to make SP, right? There's some cool stuff you can do with this card. I don't think it's like crazy or anything, but I think this card's cool and worth looking at as an option for your extra deck. Anyway, that's kind of all I have to show off today. I will have videos coming in the future that are going to be going over I want to talk about the Odd Eyes deck post this, maybe a version of like Pendulum Magician. And I am going to probably show off a list of what I think this will look like post Magnificent Monsters, but I really haven't landed on anything yet just because I'm not sure if I even want to run a lot of the cards in this set. Not because they're bad, but just because Patron has so many options. It's really hard to narrow down what you actually want to run. I'm basically just showing you guys a bunch of options. I don't think any of these are like immediate insta includes in Patron going forward. I think they're all just cool things you can play around with, right? But anyway, I'll see y'all next time. Goodbye.